Some encounters sound impossible right up until the moment the witness starts describing details no normal person would invent. Hi, it's Trevor, and today I'm covering the most unbelievable Bigfoot encounters of 2026. From a wildlife researcher who claimed a wounded Sasquatch followed her home and changed everything she thought she knew, to a ranch hand who believed Bigfoot saved him from a charging bison before the encounter turned into something far worse. My name is Candace, and I went through the horrific experience of being stalked by Bigfoot all the way to my house. But once we reached my home, the Sasquatch tried to communicate with me, and what it told me is a truth so shocking it proves every Bigfoot expert's theories wrong. I was a wildlife field researcher, backcountry, high elevation, Pacific Northwest corridor, camera monitoring, species documentation, habitat assessment, 22 years of it. I was the person at the trailhead briefing who told weekend hikers that no, what they saw was probably a black bear, and here is a brochure. I was the person who changed the subject when someone brought up Sasquatch at a field dinner. I was skeptical in the way that people who know what's actually out there are skeptical, not dismissively, but with the weight of 2 decades of evidence behind the dismissal. I am telling you this so you understand exactly how far what I'm about to describe traveled to reach me. It was early April, 3 weeks past snowmelt. I was running a solo camera check through the lower drainage corridor, 12 cameras, a 4-hour loop I had walked so many times it felt like moving through my own house. I knew every blowdown, every ice patch, every place the creek went loud around the bend. I was alone, the way I was almost always alone out there. I smelled it first, not a bear. Bear is immediate. You know it the way you know coffee, instant and categorical. This was something I had no file for. Heavy, organic, closer to something familiar than anything I could name, but not quite arriving there. The smell of something large that had been somewhere wet and dark and ancient. I stopped walking, hand to my radio, weight back on my left foot. The drainage was quiet, too quiet, and I want to be careful when I say that because too quiet is the kind of thing people say in ghost stories, and I am not telling a ghost story. I'm telling you what I observed. The birds had stopped. The creek was the only sound. And underneath the creek, something else. A low displacement of air, the way the atmosphere changes when something with significant mass is nearby and not moving. I turned my head slowly. 40 feet off the trail, under a fallen cedar, in the depression the root ball had torn open when the tree came down, something was there. My first read was bear. The size was close. The low-light coloring was close. I held that for maybe 3 seconds. Then the details came in. The arm. Not a limb. An arm. Folded underneath the head the way a person folds an arm when they sleep. Fingers at the edge of the depression. Curled. Too long for any bear I had ever documented. The shoulder width to torso ratio was wrong. The hair, where it caught the light, was growing in a direction that looked organized. Along a grain, intentional, not the wild growth pattern of any animal in my catalog. I stood there long enough for the cold to settle into my forearms. And then it woke up, not the startled lurch of an animal surprised in sleep. The breathing changed first, a deliberate shift, like something running a quiet calculation underneath the surface. The posture adjusted, just slightly, and then the eyes opened. They found my face immediately. Not a scan, not the fractional second sweep you get from a deer or a bear registering a stimulus, directly to my face, which meant it had already located me before it opened its eyes, had known I was standing there, had been deciding what to do about it, and the opening of the eyes was simply the last step in a conclusion already reached. I have never been able to say what happened in that first second of eye contact without sounding like I'm reaching for something. So I'm going to say it the plainest way I know. It knew I was a person, and it was deciding what that meant. Not threat, not prey, something more complicated than either. It was injured, right shoulder compensating, fur matted along that side in the pattern a wound makes. A bad fall, probably. The granite above that drainage gets a coat of ice under the snowmelt, and it'll drop you fast. I made a decision, not a reasoned one. The kind that happens before reasoning catches up. I sat down, cross-legged, on the wet April ground. Not close enough to crowd it, not far enough to signal I was leaving. Just present. Stopped. Here. It watched me for 20 minutes. I did not move. Then it shifted its injured shoulder toward the wall of the depression and went back to sleep. I sat there for another hour to make sure. Then I walked back to my truck in the dark with the cold in my bones and something I could not name sitting in the middle of my chest, and I drove home. I should have filed a report. I should have called someone. Instead, I went back the next morning before dawn, and the morning after that, and the morning after that. I left food at the edge of the depression on the third morning. Nuts, dried fruit, the dense trail bars I carried on long checks. I put them down and walked back to my distance, and I watched it decide. That took 40 minutes. The approach took another 15, one body length at a time, long, deliberate pauses, a quality of movement I had never seen in any animal, not sneaking, not cautious exactly, but considered. Like each step was a sentence, it ate everything. Then it went back to its side of the depression, and it looked at me. Within a week, it was taking food from my hand. I am going to say that again so it lands properly. A Bigfoot, taking food from my open hand. The grip of its fingers around mine, warm, strong, held back from what I could already sense was a fraction of its actual range. My hand registered the data before my brain did, and then the brain caught up, and I had to work very hard to keep still. I had been sitting in that drainage every morning for 9 days. I had documented a lot of things in 22 years. I had never documented anything like this. On the 10th day, it put its hand on my knee while it ate and didn't move it until it was done. Its hand was larger than mine. I noticed that in my notes the same way I would note a track measurement. Clinical. The number mattered. The implication of the number was something I put aside for later. I was not ready to stop being a researcher yet. I walked back to my truck on the 31st morning, the regular loop, the regular check, the regular 2 miles of trail back to the trailhead. Nothing out of the ordinary. I drove the access road. I parked. I went inside and started the coffee. I heard the porch creak. I know every sound that porch makes. I have lived in that ranger station residence for 7 years alone, and I know which board holds for the mail carrier and which one shifts under the weight of my neighbor's dog. I know the sound of wind on the railing versus weight on the boards. This was weight. I opened the door. It was sitting on the northeast corner of the porch with its knees pulled up and its injured shoulder toward the wall. The same posture it had held in the depression, protecting the wound out of habit, the way a body holds a shape even after the immediate need has passed. It looked at me. It was not asking for anything. It had made a decision and was in the process of carrying it out. I stood in the doorway for what was probably 30 seconds. Then I left the door open, went back to the coffee, and stood at the kitchen window and watched the ravens in the meadow. I am a scientist. I am trained in observation and documentation. What I was observing was a Bigfoot sitting on my porch, and my documentation of that moment was, "Do not spook it." It came inside 20 minutes later. I know what that sentence sounds like. I know the version of this that gets told as a punchline. The wildlife researcher who brought a Bigfoot home. I have told that punchline myself about other people. I am not laughing now. I am the person who found a widened doorframe necessary, who rearranged furniture without fully admitting to herself why, who stocked the kitchen differently and told no one, and kept going to work and running camera checks and filing reports that did not mention any of this. It stayed. It did not have a name until I gave it one. I did not call it Bigfoot. I did not call it Sasquatch. Those words belong to a category of argument, of blurry photographs and contested casts and people shouting at each other in comment sections. What was occupying my back room and eating the food I put out was not an argument. It was a living thing in my care. I named it Caleb. He answered to it within the week, not the way a dog comes to its name, the way a person does. A lift of the head, a quality of attention, a recognition that the sound was addressed to him specifically. I told myself I was documenting a behavior. I was lying to myself. I was talking to him across the kitchen table, and I knew it. He healed fast, faster than the wound had any business healing. Within 3 weeks, the shoulder compensation was gone. Within a month, he was moving through the property with a certainty that told me he had mapped every inch of it. He also mapped me. He learned my schedule before I noticed he was tracking it. He knew when I left and when I came back, and what the difference in my movement meant about what kind of day it had been. He knew what the sound of the truck on the access road meant versus the sound of it at the trailhead. He knew what I looked like when I was tired and what I looked like when I was unsettled, and he responded to both differently. This is the part I want you to hold on to because it matters for what comes next. He was not just surviving in my proximity, he was paying attention to me. I started going back to the drainage with him about 3 weeks after he'd healed, not because I planned to. It happened the way things happen when two beings share a space and the rhythms line up. I headed out for the morning check, and he was at the trailhead when I got there, not waiting, already oriented toward the corridor, already in the mode I had come to recognize as field mode. We walked together. He knew the corridor better than I did, not in the way I knew it, not through documentation and name sections and protocol. He knew it from the inside. He knew which sections of creek held what and when. He knew the camera positions better than I had taught them to him, which meant he had been watching me work before I was aware he was watching. This is what I mean about him paying attention. There is a particular way he moved when he was receiving information from the terrain, a quality of stillness I had never seen in an animal or a person, a 20-minute suspension of everything that wasn't listening. The first time I matched it, standing beside him at a creek margin until the sounds restructured themselves around me, I understood that I had been moving through this country like I was reading a book by glancing at the headings. He taught me to read the whole page. I was not thinking about any of that in the morning. Things changed. I was thinking about the light, that particular low lateral April light that makes wet road surfaces throw back a cold glare and makes the meadow grass look lit from underneath. He was walking the road shoulder the way he always did, not hiding exactly, but keeping to the margin. The habit of something that understands the center of things is not always where it belongs. I noticed the habit that morning the way you sometimes notice something you've seen 1,000 times, and suddenly it hits you differently. There was a grace in it, a calibration. The same attention he brought to everything, expressed in something as small as which side of a road he walked on. I don't know why it struck me so hard right then. I think now that I was meant to see it before I lost it. Something was off in him from the first step. I want to be careful here because it's easy to backfill signs after the fact. What I observed accurately was this. His attention was oriented outward and prior, not reactive, not tracking something specific, more like someone who has already received news and is living in the few seconds before they've processed what it means. He was tuned to a frequency I couldn't hear. He was listening for something before there was anything to hear. We crossed the creek at the ford, water high with snowmelt, cold, moving fast. He went downstream to manage the depth. I used the stepping stones, standard. We came together on the far bank and turned northeast into the drainage, and that is when the sound came, from the ridgeline to the north. I have spent 22 years cataloging the sounds this terrain makes, and I can tell you with certainty what that sound was not. It was not a tree. It was not a rockfall. It was not any animal in my documentation. It was percussion. Single impact, deliberate, the sound of something solid brought down against something else solid with intention behind it. Low register. It happened once, paused 3 or 4 seconds. Happened again, then stopped. I know wood knocking. Researchers in this field argue about it constantly. What it means, whether it's real communication or territorial display or coincidence. I had always been on the skeptical side of that argument. I had written a note in a field report 3 years earlier dismissing a colleague's wood-knocking observation as likely deadfall. I had used the word likely with the confidence of someone who had never actually heard the real thing. I stopped being skeptical the moment I heard it and watched what happened to Caleb. He stopped walking. Every stop he had ever made in the field had been a response to something real, something I would subsequently hear or see or smell once my slower processing caught up with his. His stops were never precautions. They were receipts. He was oriented toward the ridgeline with the fixed, complete attention of something that has found what it was looking for, not searching, already there. And then he made a sound I had never heard him make. In all the weeks of living alongside him, I had cataloged his sounds the way I catalog everything, the low exhale of ease, the staccato click of focused interest, the 2 times I heard the long dropping vocalization that meant he was truly frightened. I had what I thought was a complete inventory. I did not have this. What came out of him in that creek bottom was structured in a way that animal vocalizations are not structured. It had a beginning and a shape and an ending that was not the shape of a feeling being released. The ending was chosen. There was intention behind the architecture of it, the same way there is intention behind the architecture of a sentence. He was not expressing a state. He was saying something, and from the ridgeline, something said something back. Same register, different pattern. A response. The way a response is structurally different from an initiation. It assumes the first thing, it builds on it, it implies a shared context. And then a silence that felt the way silence feels after a conversation ends, not before one begins. I am a researcher. My first instinct in that moment was to reach for my recorder. My second instinct, arriving about half a second later, was the one I should have been paying attention to. There were others. There had always been others in this corridor. He had always known they were there. This had not been a secret. A secret requires a choice to conceal, and he had never once given me the impression he was concealing anything. It had simply existed below my frequency range. I had been standing next to him for weeks while he lived in a world that was larger than the one I could perceive, and this morning a piece of that world had come close enough to reach me. He looked at me, back and forth, my face, the ridgeline, my face, the ridgeline. 15 seconds. Inside those 15 seconds, I watched something move through him that I recognized even though I had never seen it in him before. The particular quality of a decision that has already been made and is now being held for one more moment before it executes. He put his hand on my shoulder. He had done it before, dozens of times. A gesture I knew, part of the physical vocabulary we had built together over weeks of shared terrain. But the quality of it was different in the way that the same word said at the wrong moment suddenly means something else entirely. It was deliberate, attended. The contact of something that knows it is about to cross a line and is making the contact count. And then the hand tightened, not steadying, not directing. Something underneath all the calibrated, managed contact of the previous weeks came forward. Something older than the Caleb I knew. Something the ridgeline had called up. I did not have time to understand what was coming. The force was not something I had a referent for. I have watched him move down timber that would have needed a crew and equipment. I have cataloged that strength from a professional distance as data without ever receiving it as something that could be applied to my body. That morning, it was applied to my body. I went down hard against the root mass at the drainage's edge, 20 feet from where I had been standing, with no memory of the transit. The air left my lungs in a single compression. The back of my skull met the root mass, and the world went white and came back sharp. The specific sharpness of a mind that has understood it is in danger. He was standing over me, full height, not adjusted, not compressed for proximity or door frames or the dimensions of my kitchen. All of him, at once, for the first time. I want to try to give you the scale of this accurately, because this is the part where Bigfoot stops being a word and becomes a fact. The height of him above me was not the height of a large man. It was the height of a landscape feature. He blocked the April sky. The width of him against the tree line, I could see the tree line to his left, and it did not reach his shoulder. I had been living with this. I had been handing this creature trail mix across my kitchen counter. I had named it and talked to it and walked 12 miles of mountain terrain with it, and I had never until this moment seen all of it at the same time. His face was the same face I knew. That was the worst part. Not that it was monstrous. It wasn't. The features were the features I could have identified across a drainage, but everything I had spent weeks reading as familiar had been stripped out of them. Not anger, not aggression, something underneath all of that, something that had been present in him below everything I knew of him, and the ridgeline had called it up. He brought one arm across my chest. I did not lose consciousness. I want to be clear about that, because passing out would have been a mercy, and the morning did not offer mercy. I was present for every second of what followed. The weight of that arm was precise, not the weight of something out of control. The measured weight of a thing that knew exactly how much it was applying and had chosen that amount for a reason. He made a sound above me, not the language from the ridgeline, not any sound from my catalog. This came from somewhere below communication, below expression, the sound of something under enormous pressure, releasing a fraction of that pressure into the air, involuntary, geological. The sound of depth the surface had not been advertising. I did not speak. I did not move. Not a choice. There was no moment in which choices were available. The same instinct that had made me sit down in the mud beside him that first morning was running now. Stillness, complete and offered, the only thing I had, given without reservation. I don't know how long he stood over me. The creek ran. The April light moved across the drainage at its ordinary pace. The world did not pause. Then the arm lifted, gone as suddenly as it had arrived. He stepped back. I waited until I was certain the stillness was a choice and not a necessity. Then I turned my head. He was at the drainage margin, back partially toward me, but the angle of his body still held an awareness of me. I was still information he was receiving, still part of his accounting, and he was enormous, even at 40 feet, even at the margin. The tree line to his left didn't reach his shoulder. I was looking at something that I had been referring to with a name, feeding with my hands, walking trails with. And I was only now lying in April mud with what I would later confirm were 3 cracked ribs, receiving the full fact of what it was. Not Caleb, the creature I'd been housing, not a damaged juvenile that had followed a field researcher home, something that belonged to the ridgeline the way the ridgeline belonged to itself, something old and enormous and only partly knowable and fully, completely real. Then he started up the slope, the unhurried pace he used when he was moving towards something with full intention behind it. No looking back. The firs took him in the way the mountains take things. No ceremony, no gap in the canopy, just present and then not. The creek kept running. I lay there for a long time. The physical damage, 3 cracked ribs, a scalp laceration that bled through my collar on the walkout, a bruise across my chest that would develop over the following days into something I have no parallel for in 22 years of fieldwork. The pressure pattern was readable, precise, the record of a force that had a different outcome available to it and did not take it. He could have killed me. I lay in the drainage with 3 cracked ribs and thought about that. Not with fear. The fear had already moved through me while it was happening. What I was left with was something else. He could have killed me. He had chosen exactly the amount of force the communication required. No more. I got up using the root mass and walked back to the ford. The water was cold and fast. I crossed it and turned on the far bank, empty. Above the timberline, somewhere on the ridgeline, there were sounds that belonged to a ECE conversation I was not part of. I walked home. He did not come back that night, or the next, or the one after that. The porch was quiet in a way it hadn't been since before he arrived. My dog, a cattle mix named Roper, went to the corner of the porch every morning where his weight had worn the board a particular way and lay down there and listened, and after a while came back inside. She was not doing that for me. Animals hold vigil at frequencies I can't access. I sat at my kitchen table on the 4th night with coffee that went cold and looked at the widened doorframe and the rearranged furniture and the dents in the backroom floor that held the shape of something large that had slept there for weeks. I had spent 22 years documenting the wild from a professional distance, and I had let that distance collapse completely. And now I was sitting alone in a ranger station residence that still smelled faintly of something the field guides had no entry for. I went back to the drainage 4 days later. Prints at the creek margin. Fresh, clean edges, dew still in the surrounding grass. Large, his. He had come back to the corridor. He was just not coming back to me. I went back a week after that. Prints at the ford, pressed deep into the soft bank. The stride length and toe spread unmistakable. I know his tracks the way I know his face. These were his. He was in the country, moving through it, moving through the drainage we had walked together, moving past the cameras he had known the positions of since the first week, and showing up on not a single frame of footage. 12 cameras, 7 visits over the following month, not one image. He knew where they were. He had always known. He moves around them the way you move around the furniture in a room you know by heart. He is not hiding from me. He is simply not available to be found the way people look for Bigfoot, with cameras and bait and the assumption that it doesn't know you're looking. He knows. There is a photograph in my desk drawer. I took it during the 3rd week when he had started accompanying me on the morning checks. He is standing at the edge of the bench drainage where the tree line opens, and you can see the ridge line to the north. His back is to the camera. He is looking at something far away, his weight settled in that particular stillness of his, arms close to his sides. You can see his height against the tree line. You can see that the tree line does not reach his shoulder. That photograph is the only proof I have, and I have never shown it to anyone. Not because I don't want to be believed, because the photograph is mine, because what it holds, the scale of him, the stillness, the ridge line in the background, is not something I am ready to hand to an argument. I have spent a lot of time since then sitting with what happened at the root mass. I think the force was the message. I know that sounds like I am trying to make something brutal into something meaningful, and I understand why it sounds that way. But I have examined this with the same precision I bring to everything I document, and this is what the evidence says. He used exactly as much force as the communication required, not more. He had significantly more available, and he did not use it. What he applied was measured, chosen, specific. He needed me to know at full scale what he was, not the version that moved through my kitchen, not the version that accepted food from my open hand, the actual version, the full dimensions. He needed me to have that before he left, and the only way to give me the full dimensions of a thing is to let it act at full capacity. Not a farewell, not punishment, a fact, the most accurate and complete fact he knew how to give me. He looked at me, back and forth, my face to the ridgeline, 15 seconds, holding the before and after in the same hand for as long as both would fit. And then he gave me the truth of what he was, at exactly the force the truth required, and he walked toward the sound of his own people calling from the ridge. I am still walking the corridor. I still find his sign, still fresh every time. He is moving through the drainage constantly, more active than anything my cameras have ever captured, covering ground that would exhaust a human crew in a day. He lives in this terrain the way the terrain lives in itself, completely, without effort. He knows I am there. He has always known when I'm there. And some mornings, not every morning, not on any schedule, I come to the creek margin and I do what he taught me to do. I stop moving, I stop scanning, I stand completely still, and I open to whatever frequency I can reach, and I stay there for 20 minutes in the silence. I heard something answer once, not close, not from the drainage, from somewhere up on the ridgeline, above the tree line, in a direction I could not identify with precision. A structured sound, the same architecture I had heard in the creek bottom the morning everything changed. A beginning and a shape and a chosen ending. Not an animal, not the terrain, not any of the 2 decades of cataloged sounds I carry in my head. The same register he used when he spoke to whatever was on that ridgeline. I did not have my recorder. I stood very still and I listened to it, and I felt something I am not going to dress up in scientific language because it would not survive the translation. I felt located. I felt that something on that ridge knew exactly where I was standing and had chosen specifically to let me hear it. I have not heard it again, but I go back. Every morning I go back to the ford and I look at the far bank and I stand in silence. I take 20 minutes of complete stillness and I give them to whatever is in the frequency above mine. And some mornings, the silence has a quality that the silence before it did not have. People spend their entire lives looking for Bigfoot, setting up cameras and casts and thermal rigs and arguing on forums about what the footage shows. I have had 17 field visits since the birthday, 12 sets of fresh prints, not one frame of footage, and one sound from a ridgeline that I heard with my own ears and cannot prove. And I have a board on a porch that still holds the particular compression of a weight that sat there every morning for weeks. That's what I have. That's what I'm giving you. The far bank is empty every time I turn around at the ford. I keep turning around. My name's Dale Mercer. I'm a ranch hand out of eastern Wyoming, and I've been working open land pretty much my whole life. I'm the kind of guy who figures a bad day outside still beats a good day anywhere else. I was moving through a stretch of grassland I'd worked plenty of times before, and when I say wide open, I mean wide open. No brush, no cover, just rolling grass in every direction. There was a creek drawn off to my east with some beat-up cottonwoods along it and a thicker tree line maybe a quarter-mile north. That was it. Nothing else, and the nearest building was a long walk away. But that morning, something wasn't sitting right. I picked up a pair of mule deer out near the draw and had the glass up on them. Both of them were just standing there, heads up, ears forward, locked onto something I couldn't see. Deer don't do that for no reason, and they sure don't both fix on the same spot unless there's something there worth paying attention to. So I slowed down and did a long scan. Tree line, grass, the draw, the ridge behind me, and took my time with it. Nothing. I told myself it was probably a coyote slipping through the cottonwoods, which happens all the time, and that should have been enough to settle it. It wasn't. And then I caught something. It didn't register right away. Just a shape, darker than it should have been, sitting wrong against the grass. My eyes slid past it once, then something in my head said, "Hold up," and I brought it back. That's when it clicked. It's a bison, a big bull, maybe 200 yards out, maybe a little less. Hard to judge distance when your brain's still trying to make sense of what you're looking at. He had his head down, moving slowly like he was grazing, and on paper that should have been normal. I've been around bison enough to know the deal. You give them space, they ignore you, everybody goes about their day. Except this didn't feel simple. Something about him was off. He'd move, then stop. Not the way a grazer pauses, but more like he was thinking about the next move before he made it. Too deliberate, too controlled. I found myself stopping without meaning to, just standing there watching. And here's the thing I couldn't shake. Even with his head down, it felt like he knew I was there. Not in a dramatic way, not like he was about to charge, just aware, like I wasn't something he'd missed, like I'd already been accounted for. I shifted my path anyway, angling wider to give him space, because that's just a habit. You don't test animals that size, and you don't get stupid about it. But as I started moving again, something hit me that I didn't like one bit. I couldn't remember actually spotting him. Not in the normal way. It felt more like he'd been there the whole time, and I'd only just been allowed to notice. I don't know why, but that sat wrong enough that I couldn't let it go. The problem with common sense is it only works when the situation is actually normal, and this wasn't. Nothing about it felt like something I could just shrug off and explain away. I can't tell you the exact moment he locked onto me, because I didn't see it happen. I felt it. There's this shift that happens when a big animal goes from not paying attention to you to focusing on you. It's quiet, almost invisible, but it's there. The air feels tighter, and the space doesn't feel neutral anymore. When I looked over, he was already in that state, completely still, head up, body squared, eyes locked on me from about 200 yards out. And the first thing that crossed my mind was how long he had been looking at me like that, because I hadn't seen it start. I'd just caught it already happening. I've had animals look at me before. Elk, bears at a distance, all kinds of things. But there's a difference between an animal noticing you and an animal deciding something about you. And this wasn't curiosity. This felt like pressure, like I'd just been moved from something he was ignoring to something that mattered, and that's not where you want to be. I stopped right where I was, didn't rush it, didn't make any sudden moves. I turned a little sideways, made myself smaller and less direct, and kept my eyes on him without staring him down. Everything I knew just kicked in. Give him space. Don't act like prey. Stay calm. Stay still. Let him decide this isn't worth it. That's the playbook, and most of the time it works. I've had animals size me up and move on, and that's how it's supposed to go. But something about this didn't feel right, because he didn't look unsure. He looked like he'd already made up his mind. Then he took a step toward me, just one. Slow and deliberate, not testing, not accidental. He meant it. And I felt that step more than I saw it, like something shifted the second his weight hit the ground. That's when I knew the normal ending I was counting on wasn't coming. So I started backing up, slow and steady, keeping that same angle, eyes on him the whole time. And then he stepped again and matched me. Every step I took back, he took one forward, same pace, same rhythm, not rushing, not stopping, just staying right with me. That's when it really hit me. He wasn't just moving, he was tracking me. And that's worse than a charge, because a charge is fast and obvious, but tracking is something thinking its way toward you. It hasn't committed yet, but it's getting there, and you're the thing it's getting ready for. So my brain kicked in, and I started running options. Creek draw to the east, cottonwoods down there. Could I make it? I ran it quickly and didn't like the answer. Bison can hit around 35 miles an hour, and I can't, not even close. And that stretch between me and the draw was wide open. If I ran and he committed, there was nothing between us. No cover, no break, nothing to save me. The tree line to the north was farther with the same problem, and behind me was more of the same in every direction I ran it. The thing about going through options when the situation is real is that it's nothing like you imagine. You're burning through everything fast and desperate, and every exit closes before you finish the thought. I was standing in the worst possible place I could be. No cover, no advantage, no good options, just open ground and something big closing the distance on me, one step at a time. I kept backing up, and he just kept coming. And there's something that really gets to you about that. Doing everything right and watching it not work. I wasn't messing up, wasn't panicking, wasn't running, wasn't doing anything that would trigger him. I was following the playbook exactly the way you're supposed to, and it didn't matter. He didn't care. The distance kept shrinking anyway, steady and controlled, like the outcome had already been decided, and I was just catching up to it. At some point, I realized my breathing had changed without me deciding to change it. Cut down to the bare minimum, everything else quietly switched off. My hands went cold, and it wasn't from the air. There's something strange about that moment when your body stops consulting you and just starts making the calls itself. You're still in there, still watching, but you're not really running things anymore. By that point, it was just him. Nothing else out there existed anymore. Then he dropped his head a few inches, not all the way, not into a full charge yet, but lower, and I felt that one in my chest before my brain even put words to it, like a quiet confirmation of something I already knew, but didn't want to admit. Before we go any further, there's something you should know about first. While we were digging into this case, we found files that didn't make it to the surface. Footage, reports, evidence that got buried or pulled down before most people ever saw it. We put it all together in one place. It's in the description if you want it. I could hear him now, this low, rough exhale coming out of something big and irritated. And the sound didn't just carry through the air. It hit me and sat in my ribs. There's something about a sound like that your body understands instantly. It doesn't go through logic, doesn't get processed step by step. It just lands somewhere deeper, something older, like a part of you that's been keeping track of danger long before you ever learned how to explain it. And what it was saying was simple. This is about to happen. People like to think that in moments like that, you get calm. Like some switch flips and everything slows down, and you become steady and controlled. That's not what it feels like. I wasn't panicking, not in the way people think of panic. I wasn't flailing or freezing up. I was locked in, present, thinking as hard and as fast as I could, but my legs didn't feel like mine anymore. My breathing had gone shallow and quick without me deciding that. And every option I ran through just came back empty. Every single one. No good moves, none. And that's a hard place to land when you're staring at something like that closing the distance. So I stopped backing up, not because I wanted to, but because it wasn't doing anything, and running was worse. That's not bravery, that's just math. I held my ground, and for a few seconds, I let myself think maybe, just maybe, this is where it turns. Maybe he reads it differently. Maybe he decides I'm not worth the trouble. Animals do that. They size things up, weigh the cost, and walk away. I've seen it happen, and I needed it to happen. So I stood as still as I could, barely breathing, giving him every possible reason to lose interest and move on. For a moment, it felt like everything was just hanging there. Then he moved again, 3 steps this time, faster, lower, and something in the way his body shifted, the angle, the way his weight started to come forward, my body understood it before my brain did. But my brain caught up quick. I'd seen enough, read enough. I knew exactly what that meant, and whatever was about to happen next was going to happen fast. He lowered his head the rest of the way, and that was it. When a bison drops into a full charge like that, there's no more guessing, no more maybe. Everything about the situation just locks in all at once, and none of it's good. I didn't think that in words right then. I just knew it, the kind of knowing that hits you deeper than thought, like your body's been here before, even if you haven't. Then he came at me, and I mean came at me. It didn't look like something that big should be able to move like that. It was like he got launched. That's the only way I can put it. 1 second he's there, the next he's closing distance faster than makes sense, and your brain just lags, just a fraction too slow to accept what it's seeing, and that fraction costs you. I heard the hooves before I fully registered the movement. Deep, heavy, pounding, like something hitting the ground with real weight behind it, getting louder way too fast. Then I was moving too, not because I decided to, because there was no plan. My body just went sideways, down. The ground came up quick, and through all of it, all that noise and speed, one thought made it through clean. Brace. Time didn't slow the way people say it does. It broke. Everything turned into pieces instead of a sequence. No smooth transitions, just moments stacked on top of each other. My hands hitting the ground, the sound filling everything, the distance collapsing so fast there was no room left to think about anything except what was about to happen. And this is the part that still doesn't sit right with me. In that last split second, the thing my brain decided to focus on was the smell of the grass. frost on it. That's what I noticed. Not the animal, not the impact coming, just the frost. I was down on my side, arm up, braced. There was no move left, no last-second plan, no escape, no adjustment. All that stuff you think you'd do, that's only there when the danger's still theoretical. When it's real, when it's right there, and moving, none of that holds. I wasn't thinking about rolling away, wasn't trying to cover up or get clear. I was just there, out of room, waiting. And what goes through your head in a moment like that? Almost nothing. It's not your life flashing, not faces or memories or anything like that. It's just this stripped-down, empty awareness of what's about to happen. The ground under your hands, the sound getting closer, the certainty of it. No words, just knowing. The hooves were loud, right there. And then something hit him. Not me, him. Hard from my left. It wasn't a glancing blow. It caught him across the shoulder mid-charge and knocked his front end offline. The sound changed instantly, from straight-on thunder to something broken and uneven. The bull lurched sideways, hooves tearing into the ground as all that forward momentum twisted out from under him. His front legs hit wrong, tried to catch, and for a second it looked like he might go down. He didn't, but he lost it. That clean straight line was gone. He jerked his head toward whatever hit him, let out a sharp, rough burst of air, and took a couple of uneven steps back, angling away instead of forward. And that's when I saw what hit him. Bigfoot. And then I saw something I have never seen in my life. That bull started backing up. Not turning, not circling, backing up. A full-grown bull bison, reversing step by step, throwing out these short, choppy snorts that I recognized right away for what they were. Fear. Real fear. I've heard that sound before out there. You spend enough time around animals, you learn it. But I had never, not once, heard it come from something that had just been about to run me over like I wasn't even there. 30 seconds ago, that thing was a freight train coming straight at me, and now it was giving ground. It wasn't looking at me anymore. I didn't matter. Everything it had was locked onto something off to my left. So I turned. And I'll be straight with you. This is the part people always push on. This is where they start looking for holes, trying to figure out where the story breaks. So I'm just going to tell you exactly what I saw. No dressing it up, no trying to make it fit anything, because it didn't fit. My brain didn't even try to label it at first. It just stalled out, like it hit something it didn't have a category for. The first thing that registered was the size, because that's always first when something's wrong enough. Your brain goes straight to scale, because scale is survival. And the size was wrong. Not just big, wrong. And not in a simple way, like seeing a big bear stand up. This was different. It took me a second to even figure out why it felt off, because it wasn't just height. It was the proportions, the width of the shoulders, the length of the arms, the way they hung down, and the way it was standing. Upright, not reared up, not balancing, just standing there like that was normal. It was at the edge of the grass, where it thins out toward the tree line to the north, and it wasn't moving, not toward the bull, not toward me. It was just there. And somewhere in the middle of trying to make sense of it, it hit me what I was looking at. Bigfoot. There's no other way to say it. That's what it was, and I know how that sounds, but there wasn't anything else it could be. Not with that size, not with that build, not with the way it was standing there like it belonged. And the worst part? It wasn't doing anything. No charge, no display, no noise. It just stood there, like it didn't need to prove anything, like its presence alone was enough. And apparently it was, because the bull snorted again, sharper this time, and gave more ground, still backing up. If you know anything about bison, you know they don't do that. They're not wired that way. They push, they take space, they don't give it up. Which means Bigfoot had just given that animal a reason strong enough to override all of that. And I was watching it happen from the ground, still trying to catch up to the fact that I was alive. Then the smell hit me all at once. Heavy, thick, not rotten, not exactly bad, just wrong, like something that didn't belong in that place. It had weight to it. It didn't just pass through, it stayed. The bull held for a few more seconds in that strange standoff I wasn't part of. No sound except those short bursts coming out of him. No movement except the space he kept giving up. Then he turned and left. Not slow, not unsure, but with purpose, putting real distance between himself and Bigfoot like it mattered. He didn't look back. For a couple of seconds after he was gone, the whole field went quiet. Not normal quiet, something heavier than that, like everything was waiting. Then it was just me and Bigfoot standing there at the edge of the grass. I was still on the ground. My legs hadn't caught up yet, hadn't gotten the message that the thing trying to kill me was gone. And getting up felt like more than just standing. It felt like a decision. Like the second I stood up, I'd have to fully accept what I was looking at, and I wasn't there yet. So I stayed down, propped up just enough to see, and I watched it. Bigfoot didn't move, not frozen still, not tense like it was ready to react, just still. The kind of stillness that doesn't look forced, the kind where you get the sense this is just how it exists when it's not doing anything else. No urgency, no edge to it, unbothered. Like none of what just happened had cost it anything. I tried to make sense of it, tried to line it up with something I already understood, and I couldn't. I kept reaching for comparisons, and every single one fell apart the second I got close. Bear? No. The shape was wrong, the way it stood was wrong. Bears standing up have that forward lean, like they're balancing on something they weren't built for. This didn't have any of that. This was upright, not trying to be, just upright, like that was its default. The arms were too long, hanging lower than they should have. The chest was too wide. The head sat on the shoulders in a way that didn't quite make sense, like the neck was shorter than it should be, or the shoulders were higher, or both. I'd focus on one detail, try to lock it in, and it would slip away the second I tried to compare it to anything familiar. Nothing lined up. Every reference I reached for just bounced off, and after a few seconds of that, I stopped trying and just looked, because that was all I had left. And the size, I keep coming back to that because I know how people hear something like this and scale it down in their heads, try to fit it into something they already understand. You can't. Standing there at the edge of the grass with the tree line behind it, it didn't fit into large animal. It was past that, wrong in a way that doesn't give you a clean number to hold on to. But more than the size, more than anything else, it was the stillness that stuck with me. I've spent a lot of time outdoors, and I've seen animals in all kinds of situations, and when something big realizes it's been seen, it reacts. It moves, it postures, it leaves, it does something. Bigfoot didn't. It just stood there, like that alone was enough, like it already knew it didn't need to add anything to it. And that's the part I can't shake, because something that knows its presence is enough, that's not instinct, that's something else. Then at some point, I couldn't tell you exactly when, because time still wasn't working right. It shifted, not its body, its attention. Up until then, it had been angled toward where the bull had gone, but then slowly, its head turned. Not fast, not sharp, just deliberate, like it had decided to look at me, and that was that. And when it did, I felt it. The same way I'd felt the bison lock onto me earlier, but different. There was no surge of aggression in it, no pressure building toward impact. This was quieter, heavier, in a different way. Its eyes settled on me, and they didn't wander, didn't flick around, didn't check anything else, just stayed there. And I got this very clear sense that I wasn't just being seen. I was being figured out. That's the closest I can get to it. Assessment, like I was something it was deciding about. There was no rush in it, no tension, no sign that it felt threatened or needed to act. If anything, it felt like the opposite, like time didn't apply to it the same way it did to me. I didn't move. I don't think I could have if I tried. Every part of me was locked in place, not out of panic, but because moving didn't feel like an option that existed anymore. And there's something deeply unsettling about not knowing if you're in danger. Fear, at least, has direction. You know what it is. You know what it wants. This wasn't that. This felt like being weighed, like something was deciding if I mattered, and I had no idea what the answer was going to be or what it was even based on. It stood there, and I stayed down, and I don't know how long that lasted. 30 seconds, maybe a couple of minutes. Time wasn't doing anything normal anymore, so trying to measure it after the fact doesn't really work. Then Bigfoot moved. Not toward me, that's the first thing. It turned slightly and started moving parallel to the tree line, unhurried, like it had already made whatever decision it needed to make. Then it stepped into the trees, and this is the part that never sat right with me. It didn't make a sound. Not less sound, none. Something that size moving through that kind of cover should have made noise, branches and brush, something snapping or shifting. Nothing. It just went in, and the trees closed behind it like it had never been there, like dropping a rock into water and watching the surface smooth back out. Just like that, it was gone. The field went quiet again, not normal quiet, heavier than that, the kind where it feels like everything is still holding its breath. I stayed there for a while, didn't rush to get up, didn't try to follow, just sat there in the grass and listened. Wind moving through it, that was it. Even the birds hadn't come back yet. When I finally stood up, I walked straight to where Bigfoot had been standing. I needed something solid, something real, something I could put my hands on and say, yeah, that happened. The grass there was pressed down, wide and deep. Not wind, not me. Something had been there. I stood in that spot and looked back at where I'd been lying, trying to line it up in my head, trying to make the whole thing connect in a way that made sense. It didn't. But the grass didn't lie. That was the only proof I was going to get. Not a picture, not a track anyone else would accept, just bent grass in a field where something that shouldn't exist had stood and made a decision, one that kept me alive. I stood there with that for a while, then I walked out. And that walk back was the longest one I've ever taken, not because of distance, but because of what I was carrying. I've always been a practical person, skeptical by default, the kind of guy who hears stories like this and shakes his head. And that version of me was still there the whole way back, trying to make it fit into something normal, trying to explain it. Every step, same result, nothing, no clean answer. I told someone when I got back. The reaction was exactly what you'd expect, and honestly, that part didn't bother me. I already knew how that was going to go. What I haven't figured out, and probably never will, is the why. Why that place? Why that moment? Was it just timing? Just being in the wrong spot with the wrong animal, and Bigfoot happened to be there? Or was there something else going on, something more deliberate? I don't have a way to answer that, and I've sat with it long enough to know I probably never will. All I know is this: a bison was about to kill me, but because of Bigfoot, it never reached me. The bear was already too close when I heard it. Not the crashing sound people imagine. No snapping branches, no warning. Just the sudden wrongness of something large occupying space that had been empty a breath before. 500 pounds, maybe 6. Moving through a second-growth spruce with a quietness that shouldn't have been possible for that size. I had the .338 up before my mind caught up to what my hands were doing. 8 years in this corridor. You don't think about the rifle, your hands just know. I want to back up because the morning doesn't start there. The morning starts in the dark before first light, when I crossed into the lower corridor and the temperature dropped the way it does when you move from open hillside into old timber. Not a weather change, a different world. I've made that crossing dozens of times. I know how to walk it without sound, heel to toe, weight transfer smooth. By the time I'm in the corridor in the dark, I'm not thinking anymore. I'm listening. I was hunting alone. That matters to everything that follows. Not because hunting alone in grizzly country is reckless, I've done it my entire adult life, but because alone means the record of the morning is entirely mine. No one else standing 30 meters away with a different angle. The record is what I experienced, and I've had to spend a lot of time since September deciding how much confidence to place in the recording instrument, which is me. I know this corridor. That's the honest beginning. I know where the creek bends south around the granite outcropping and where the game trail intersects the bench drainage. I know the sound the water makes when it goes over the flat rock at the ford, lower in September than August, a different note. And I know the old growth on the south side runs about 200 meters before the density drops enough that visibility opens to 40, 50 meters in good light. 8 years is long enough to know a piece of country the way you know a house you grew up in. The kind of knowing that isn't conscious, that lives in the body and expresses itself as rightness or wrongness before thought arrives to explain it. The first indication that the morning was different came at 6:58, though I didn't know the time. I don't carry a watch in the field. The sound came from my northeast, maybe 60 meters, and it wasn't something I had a category for. Low, percussive. Not the sound of a tree falling, which I know well. That has a progression to it, a creak, and then a rush, and then the strike, and not a rockfall, which in this terrain would come from above and to the south anyway. This was a single contact, something brought down against Earth. Deliberate, the way a thing announces itself. I stopped. Went still the way you go still when the information is incomplete and you need to buy time for more. Whatever it was, didn't repeat. The drainage went back to its own quiet, and I stood there for a full minute, maybe more, trying to place it in a category that made sense for this country. Bear knocking over a standing dead? Possible. Possible, but not quite right. I've heard that, and there's usually secondary sound, the roll of wood on ground, the scattering. This was clean, one impact and silence. I filed it and kept moving because the light was coming, and the elk don't hold position past legal light when the pressure's on. I moved northeast along the main game trail. The corridor was doing its morning thing, the gradual emergence of detail as gray became color, the shapes separating from the dark. I was thinking about elk, about the approach angle from the south side and whether the wind would hold. I was not thinking about what had made the sound at 6:58. The bear was at 30 meters when I first registered it, maybe 35. Moving through the second growth spruce on a line that would intersect mine in about the time it takes to draw a breath. The quietness of it was what stopped me first. That wrongness, that sense of displacement, the feeling of scale where scale shouldn't be. Then I processed what I was seeing, and the rifle came up. Bear 4, though I didn't have a name for it then. Just a mature male, close enough that I could see the silver tipping on its shoulders and the mass of the head and the way it moved with a low-slung power that elk don't have and deer don't have, a different kind of weight, the weight of something that has no serious predator in this ecosystem and knows it at a cellular level. Its nose was working constantly, that side-to-side movement, reading the air, compiling information I couldn't access. It was angled slightly away from me, which meant it hadn't fully fixed on my position yet. The wind was southeast to northwest. I was upwind. In about 3 more seconds, it was going to know exactly where I was. It didn't charge. That was the first wrong thing. A grizzly that close, surprised, usually commits. The decision happens fast, and there's a shape to it. The lowered head, the ears, the bladed stance that shifts weight forward. I've had 2 encounters at distance that went to the charge, one when I was guiding a client and put myself between him and a sow with cubs, and both times the bear's body language telegraphed the decision before the charge began. This bear did none of that. It stopped. It looked at me, not the wild swinging look of a surprised animal, but something more deliberate, a fixed assessment. The way an animal looks at something when it's running a calculation rather than reacting to stimulus. And then it made a sound I had never heard a bear make before. Low, pulsing, not the teeth-popping bluster of an agitated bear, not the woofing exhalation of a threat display. Uncertain, thick with something I don't have a word for except to say it sounded like the noise a very large and very confident animal makes when it encounters something that unsettles its confidence. Then it turned, not away from me, away from the trees to my northeast. I was so focused on tracking the bear's retreat that I almost missed what it was retreating from. The bear moved northwest at a pace that wasn't quite panic, but wasn't the unhurried amble of a bear going about its business. Directional, the way an animal moves when an assessment has produced a clear instruction. It registered as scale first. I don't know how else to say it. The eye catches proportion before the brain has vocabulary for proportion. In the tree line to my northeast, where the morning light hadn't fully penetrated the timber, there was a shape that was wrong. Not wrong the way a shape is wrong when it's ambiguous, when you can't tell if it's a stump or a standing deer or a boulder you hadn't accounted for. Wrong the way a shape is wrong when you can see it clearly and what you see doesn't fit. Upright, still, wide at the shoulder in a way that had no referent in my experience of this drainage or this terrain type, or I realized slowly, and with a sensation I'm still not able to name accurately, any terrain I'd ever hunted in the previous 8 years. It was watching the bear leave. I know what I was looking at. I know the word for it, Bigfoot. Then it turned and looked at me. What I experienced in that moment was not terror, not the animal terror of the bear encounter, which is physical and fast and operates below language. This was something else, something that had more room in it. The way it looked at me did not feel like being registered by an animal. It felt like being considered. The difference between a thing looking toward you because you're a stimulus and a thing looking at you because it is deciding something. I started moving west before I decided to. My legs made the call. What I remember from the first 100 meters is almost nothing, a kind of white noise where rational thought used to be, my body running a program my mind hadn't written. I know I was moving fast. I know the rifle was in my right hand and the muzzle was down, which is wrong in the mechanical sense and right in every other sense, because I was covering ground, and a shouldered rifle costs ground. When I came back to something like conscious awareness, I was already past the second camera post and heading for the main game trail that runs west toward the ford. And I knew I was moving fast because the country was sliding past faster than it usually does when I'm in it, familiar landmarks arriving before I expected them. I made myself look back. Once, it was following, not running, not rushing. The stride was long and even, each step covering ground that would have taken me 2 steps, maybe 3, and the pace had the quality of something that doesn't experience terrain as a problem to solve, as if the ground beneath it was simply cooperating. The head was level, not bobbing the way a running animal's head bobs, and the arms, and this is where my mind snagged and kept snagging for the rest of the run, the arms were close to the body, hands still, not swinging the way arms swing when you're moving fast, just there. The whole figure was composed in a way that had nothing urgent about it, despite the fact that it was closing ground. It was not interested in the bear. I understood that with a clarity that arrived fully formed, bypassing the usual process of construction. The bear had moved through this drainage ahead of whatever this was, registering scent, flushing cover, and once it had located me, once the finding was complete, it had been allowed to leave. Because the finding was what it had been useful for, and the finding was done. Now the bear was gone. I was the only thing left in this corridor, and it was still coming. I ran the ford without slowing, 8 inches of moving water. Cold enough in late September that I should have felt it, and I didn't feel it. Just the impact of the far bank's gravel against my boot, the scramble up the mud at the edge, the tree line closing around me on the west side. My lungs were burning by then. I'd been moving hard for close to 20 minutes through elevation, and the debt was accumulating in my legs and lungs in ways I was aware of and couldn't do anything about. Respiratory debt in the mountains has a shape to it. There's a point where the available pace starts declining, and there's nothing to be done except accept the new ceiling. And I could feel that ceiling approaching. The figure behind me was not experiencing a ceiling. It had no ceiling I could detect. The stride I'd seen in that single backward glance covered ground faster than I was covering it. Not the explosive gap-closing rush of a bear in a bluff charge, but steadily faster, a pace that didn't seem to require anything from the body producing it. The choke point was the only play I had left. I knew this terrain. I knew the choke point from 3 seasons of hunting the corridor, a place where the valley narrows between the rock face and the creek, where the drainage floor compresses to 30 meters before opening again below the high bench. There was a natural defensive position at the east side of the gap, a rock face that would put stone at my back, and from that position you could see the full narrow section of the drainage for 50, 60 meters, which in .338 terms is close range. Not far enough to feel comfortable, but close enough that the round does everything it was designed to do. I changed direction, angled north toward the choke point, adding time to my route, but adding what I needed more than time. Stone at my back, a clear sight line. The crossing took me through blowdown from 2 winters back, old spruce creating a grid I had to climb over and under. I lost 30 seconds to it. I don't know what happened to the gap during those 30 seconds because I didn't look back. I reached the choke point at the rock face and put my back against the stone and turned. The drainage corridor was empty, 40 meters of narrow valley floor, creek on the left, rock face on my right, the timber at the far end where the spruce closed in and the sight line ended. Nothing moving. The sound of the creek over its stones, normal, unchanged. My own breathing, which was not normal and not unchanged. I was pulling air in the way you pull it after a hard mountain run, the chest expanding fully, the exhalation too short, the whole system running in deficit. I gave it 30 seconds and made myself slow the breath down because a controlled respiratory rate is a controlled trigger pull, and I was going to need the trigger pull to be controlled. I knew this terrain. Narrow gap, rock face on the east side, clear sight line back down the drainage. High ground in the relative sense. I was elevated maybe 3 meters above the drainage floor, which changes the geometry of a shot in ways that matter. The .338 was loaded. I'd been carrying 5 rounds in the magazine and 1 in the chamber through the whole morning, the standard field carry. 4,000 foot-pounds at the muzzle, a round designed for exactly the category of animal I might encounter here. Not designed for this, there is no caliber designed for this, but it was what I had, and I was using what I had. It came into view between two old spruce at the corridor's far end. I had spent the 20-minute run trying to rationalize what I'd seen in the tree line. Trick of light, bad angle, stress distorting scale. A bear standing on its hind legs looks wrong in the way upright bears always look wrong, and in partial light of a shadowed tree line, that explanation isn't ridiculous. It requires some contortion of the evidence, but it doesn't require you to accept something that reorganizes everything. Open ground in full morning light does not allow for those exits. What I saw was upright and bipedal and moving at the pace I had tracked during the run, that steady, patient, ground-eating pace that covered 9 feet per full stride. The head was level. The shoulders did not rotate the way shoulders rotate when a human walks fast. The arms hung in a way that had no human referent. Wrist height at mid-thigh, not swinging, close to the body, still in a way that the arms of a moving thing should not be still. And the proportions. The height I couldn't calculate exactly from that distance and that position, but I knew was wrong. Not wrong the way a tall man is wrong. Wrong the way a category error is wrong. Too high from the drainage floor. Too wide across the shoulders. The wrong shape in the wrong place at a size that didn't connect to any animal I'd encountered in 8 years or 34 years of being alive in the outdoors. It was not running, it was walking toward me. What I was looking at had a name I had spent 20 minutes refusing to use. Bigfoot. I fired. The .338 is loud enough in a canyon that the first shot takes everything for a moment. Sound, vision, coherent thought, all of it replaced by the report bouncing off the rock face and the creek canyon until it's hard to locate yourself in the noise. When it came back, I was already chambering the second round, the bolt handled without conscious instruction. I found the target in the scope and fired again. Then I shifted my weight from right foot to left, a practiced adjustment for changing angle, and fired a third time. Nothing. That is the word for what happened, and it is not a sufficient word. No reaction, no stumbling, no change in gait, no flinching. The rounds went somewhere. I heard 2 strike earth behind and to the right, but the third I am certain was on target. I was aiming for center mass. The angle was up, which I registered distantly as information I didn't want. The middle of it was above my eye level from the rock face base, which required an upward angle to reach. 3 rounds, no observable effect. I kept firing because the act preserves the possibility the next round will matter. Every hunter who has ever raised a weapon at a dangerous animal knows this at a level that doesn't require articulation. You fire until something changes. The stopping, if it happens, is something that happens to you because the evidence against the possibility of the next round mattering becomes too large to continue past. 3 rounds. I stopped. There was a specific moment when I understood the 4th round was not going to change what the first 3 hadn't changed. That understanding arrived not as a conclusion I reasoned toward, but as something given, delivered whole. I stopped, and then I set the rifle down against the rock face. Not dropped it, set it, the butt finding stone, the barrel leaning, deliberate as setting down a tool you've decided isn't the right tool for the job. It was a choice made under conditions where no choice should have been possible, and yet it was chosen, consciously, clearly. Then I turned to the rock scramble above me, and I climbed, both hands on granite, feet finding purchase in cracks and ledges I'd never scouted because I'd never conceived of needing them. The rock face above the choke point wasn't technical climbing in the formal sense, no rope required, no specialized equipment, but it was the kind of terrain where misjudging a foothold costs you everything, where you have to commit weight to a hold before you're sure it'll take the weight. I committed every hold. I didn't think about whether the holds would take me. I climbed because the alternative was standing at the base of the rock face with an empty rifle and whatever understanding I'd reached about the empty rifle's significance. The rifle stayed where I left it. I didn't look back. I have tried to explain this to people who ask about it, and the best I can offer is this. Looking back was not going to change what I'd find, and what I'd find was going to cost me what I couldn't afford to spend. The math of the climb required everything, full attention, full commitment of every limb and pound of body weight to the problem of the next hold. Dividing that attention was the same as failing the climb, and I had already made the decision somewhere in the sequence of those 3 rounds and the silence that followed them, that the climb was the only thing that mattered. I needed my hands. That's what I said later, and that's what I meant, and it contains everything it contains. The bench opened above the choke point, and I crossed it at a run, arms driving, legs past the point of pain, into something that doesn't have a name. 200 meters of open ground, bench grass at knee height in September, the far tree line a dark line at the edge of my vision. I crossed it the only way you can cross open ground, with a gap closing behind you, at maximum effort. I made the far tree line and went in without slowing. Deeper, northeast, into terrain that steepened and got technical fast. The granite formation started, broken country where roots have to be found rather than followed. I found the ledge by accident, northeast face of a formation not on any hunting access map, no reason for anyone to go there. A narrow ledge at a height that required technical scrambling to reach, with an overhang above that would cut the wind and the sightline from below. I climbed up and sat down against the rock wall and did not move. The temperature dropped the way it drops in the mountains in late September, fast once the sun angle changes. I had a day hunt's worth of gear, not gear for a night at elevation. I managed. I did not build a fire. I sat against the rock and listened to the drainage below and heard nothing that told me where it was or how far or whether it was still in the country at all. I stayed on the ledge through the night and into the following afternoon when the search team found me. The search team lead, a woman with 16 years running searches in grizzly country, looked at me the way medical professionals look at a patient whose chart has surprised them. She said I looked like I'd had a significant experience. She was not wrong. My statement that evening was incomplete, not dishonestly. I said what I could say, which was that I'd had a bear encounter at close range and made poor navigation decisions and ended up on the ledge. There is a way a mind protects itself in the immediate aftermath of something it hasn't finished processing, by staying inside the available categories a little longer, deferring the revision until it becomes unavoidable. The revision became unavoidable over the following weeks, as the details that had been blurred by stress sharpened into something I couldn't soften back down. The shape in the tree line, the pace, the stride, the 3 rounds and the silence after, the angle of the third shot. The following June I went back to the drainage. No rifle. 3 days in the corridor with a notebook and an absence of agenda, not something I'm naturally suited to, having spent 8 years in this country organized around finding a specific animal. Going back without that structure felt like going back to a house I'd lived in and finding the furniture rearranged. The shapes were familiar and the orientation was wrong. On the second morning, I found fresh tracks on the main game trail. That morning's prints, dew still in the grass at the trail margins, impressions clean and sharp, the kind of clarity you get from tracks made in the last few hours. Moving through the corridor in the same direction, I didn't need any analysis to recognize the length, the stride, the proportions my body had already cataloged on September 24th. I didn't follow them. I stood at the trail margin and looked at them for what must have been 2 minutes. Then I stepped back and walked 20 meters to a downed spruce and sat on the trunk at the trail's edge and waited. An hour, maybe a little more. The drainage did its late June morning things, light shifting through the canopy, the creek louder than September, birds working their routines. A doe at the seep crossing, 200 meters away. A juvenile hawk, working the open bench before drifting out of sight. Normal things. The things a drainage does when it's doing its own business. I saw nothing that explained the tracks. Eventually, I got up from the log and walked out. People ask me if I think something was watching during that hour. They ask it carefully, the way people ask things when they're not sure the question is allowed. I understand the carefulness. I practiced it myself for 8 months. I built careful language around the edges of what I knew, because the careful language preserved the possibility of remaining inside the available categories. The categories where ordinary conversation happens, and you can talk to people without watching them recalibrate their assessment of your reliability. I don't think it in the way you think about things that might be true. I know it the way I knew, on September 24th, what the situation required, before my mind had completed the sentence. That kind of knowing lives somewhere below language and doesn't come up for debate because it isn't a thought. It's closer to a physical fact, like knowing where the ground is beneath your feet. You know it because you're in contact with it, and the contact is direct, and no amount of subsequent reasoning changes what the contact told you. I am still here. That is the foundational fact of everything that follows. I ran well. I shot well. I climbed well. None of those things are why I'm here. I'm here because of a decision made by something else about what the morning was going to produce, at a point in the sequence when I had no remaining input into the outcome. 3 rounds from a .338 Winchester Magnum at close range in open terrain. Then I set the rifle down. Then I climbed. and it let me climb. The whole morning had a shape. The sound before dawn was the beginning of it. The bear encounter was the middle. The chase, the choke point, the 3 rounds were the body. The letting was part of the shape, not luck, not distraction. It happened because the morning arrived at a point where a decision was available, and the decision was made. The bear was never the point. I understood that in the drainage, running, and I've understood it more completely in the months since. The bear moved through the corridor and found me the way a bear finds things, by covering ground, reading air. And once the finding was done, it was allowed to leave. And then the thing that had been using the bear's ranging for its own purposes moved openly through the corridor it had cleared. That sequence implies planning at a level I don't have a comfortable framework for. The difference between processing a situation and having already decided about the situation before it began. The bear left, and then, when the space was clear, what had been waiting for the space to be clear moved into it. Not because the bear's leaving was coincidental, because the bear's leaving was the signal. I've told the story in the third person to investigators and the search team. Cole Rutherford was found on the ledge. Cole Rutherford gave a statement. Cole Rutherford returned to the drainage the following June. The distance helps because what happened to Cole Rutherford on September 24th is something I am still in the process of becoming a person who experienced it, and the process is slow. What I think, and this is the most speculative thing I'll say, is that the hour on the log was permitted. That sitting there was something it knew about and chose not to interrupt, the way it chose on September 24th not to close the gap at the choke point. The not closing is a choice. The not interrupting is a choice. Choices imply a chooser with access to alternatives. I don't think I deserve to be let go, not as self-punishment, as a descriptive observation about the economy of the situation. I was in its corridor. I had a rifle. I fired the rifle. None of those merit grace, and yet the grace was extended, and I am here to account for it, and I find myself unable to settle the account because the debt keeps compounding the longer I look at it. It was there before I arrived. It will be there after I'm gone. The drainage has been keeping its own record for longer than anyone has been running cameras in it, longer than I have been hunting it. What I saw on September 24th has been in that country for a long time. Longer than the question of what it is has been a question anyone was asking. And on one morning in September, it made a decision about me, and I am still not sure what I did to deserve it. But I know what I know. I know what the rifle did and didn't do. I know what 3 rounds from a cartridge designed for large, dangerous game told me when they told me nothing. I know the shape in the tree line and the length of the stride and the quality of the attention when it turned and looked at me. I know what a 600-pound grizzly with 3 seasons in that corridor sounded like when it decided to leave, and I know the direction it went, and I know what came into the space it vacated. I know that I sat on a granite ledge for 18 hours and heard nothing that told me I was still being followed. I know that the following June I sat on a log and waited and was allowed to wait. And I know the drainage in northwestern Montana has been keeping its own account of who moves through it, long before I arrived with 8 years of knowledge and a caliber designed for the largest animals in this ecosystem. The account it kept on the morning of September 24th is the account I've given you. I haven't gone back in September. I'm not sure I will. There's a question I can't resolve, whether going back is an act of understanding or an act of testing something that has already been decided, whether it matters to whatever accounting is kept in that corridor, whether I return or not. What I can say is this: something that was there before I arrived and will be there after I'm gone moved through that drainage on one morning in September and made a decision about me that I am still trying to be worthy of. The rest of it lives in the corridor, in the prints that were in the mud at the game trail on a June morning when the dew was still on the grass, and a man who had survived something sat on a log and waited and was allowed to sit there as long as he needed. As long as he needed. I needed a long time. I'm still needing it. The footage starts with Jessie Curson, just her face, too close to the lens, jaw tight, voice already at full volume. She's somewhere on a forest trail in the Pacific Northwest, fir trees pressing in on both sides, and she is furious. The guide is visible at the edge of the frame, hands up, patient in that way that means he's been patient for a very long time. She doesn't care. She said that she paid for a premium wildlife excursion. She keeps saying premium, and she claims she hasn't seen a single thing worth her money. The guide tells Jessie to stay on the marked trail. She laughs. That laugh is the last normal sound in this entire recording. What happens in the next 60 seconds will make your stomach drop, because Bigfoot is already standing in those trees behind her, and she has absolutely no idea. 80 yards back, maybe less. A shape moves between two trees, upright, massive, unhurried, black against the darker black of the timber. It doesn't run and it doesn't hide. It simply crosses from one trunk to the next with the casual confidence of something that has never once needed to be afraid of anything in these woods. The footage catches maybe 2 full seconds of Bigfoot before it's gone, swallowed by the cedar shadow. Jessie spins the phone around trying to see it. The rest of the group is already 20 yards ahead. She stays behind on purpose, phone up, grinning, absolutely certain she just found the hidden attraction they were selling all along. She pushes off the trail to get closer, and what she finds tucked under those branches is going to change everything, because Bigfoot didn't come to this part of the forest alone. Jessie pushes through the salal brush like it owes her something. There, half collapsed under a tangle of broken branches beside a moss-eaten fallen log, is something she was absolutely not prepared to find. A baby Bigfoot. It's small, maybe 4 feet tall, covered in dark coarse hair, matted flat in places like it's been wet and dried wrong. Its limbs are thin in the way young things are thin, built more for future size than present use. It's breathing fast and shallow, ribs visible with each inhale, and one of its back legs is pulled at an angle that doesn't match the other one. The injury is obvious. Whatever happened to it, a fall down the slope, a trap edge, something worse. It happened recently. She starts whispering loudly to her camera that she found an actual baby Bigfoot. She says it twice. Then she swings the camera back to her own face for a reaction shot, eyes wide, mouth open, already performing the moment instead of living inside the danger of it. The baby Bigfoot pulls itself backward against the log, breath quickening, dark eyes fixed on her with the specific terror of a creature that is hurt, cornered, and completely alone. She doesn't register any of that. She crouches down, cooing, and starts talking to it like it's a stray she found behind a grocery store. What I keep coming back to is the baby Bigfoot's eyes in this frame, because they're not looking at her. They're looking past her, into the trees behind her, at something she can't see yet. The baby Bigfoot bares its teeth the moment she gets within arm's reach. Not a slow warning. Immediate, full, every small tooth visible. A sound coming from its throat that sits somewhere between a hiss and a bark. Its whole body compresses backward, shoulders up, injured leg dragging, putting every inch of distance between itself and her hand that the fallen log will allow. Any reasonable person reads that as a hard stop. She reads it as adorable. She tells the camera it's just scared. She says it in the voice people use with puppies. She says scared means it's real, and real means she wins, and winning means she needs to get her hand on it before the guide comes crashing through the brush and ruins everything. She's already talking about how no one can deny footage if there's physical contact. She reaches forward and touches its shoulder. The baby Bigfoot screams. Not a whimper, not a cry. A scream, sharp and violent and carrying the kind of sound that has no business, coming from something that size. She yanks her hand back hard, startled, and then, and I have to be precise here because this matters for everything that follows, she slaps it, open palm, fast, directly across its face, the kind of thing people do when they're frightened and haven't thought past their own adrenaline. She laughs immediately after, nervous, high-pitched, and keeps talking to it like the slap didn't happen. Every bird within 100 yards leaves the trees at once. She doesn't notice. She's reaching for its arm now, trying to get a grip for the camera, repositioning her angle. And that's when she finally looks up and sees the tree trunks surrounding her. The bark on every one of them gouged open in long vertical strips, raw wood exposed, pale and fresh. The lowest marks are 8 feet off the ground. The highest disappear into the canopy. Whatever made those was here very recently. Whatever made those is very, very large. Those marks on the trees aren't a warning, they're an address. And the thing that lives there just heard its baby scream. What charges out of that timber next will make every hair on your body stand up. There is no roar. That's the thing nobody expects. The mother Bigfoot gives her nothing. One moment the tree line is still. The next moment something the size of a refrigerator is moving at full sprint through it, and the sound isn't a roar. It's the sound of timber giving way, branches snapping like gunshots in sequence, getting louder, getting closer, a percussive countdown that ends at her. The footage becomes chaos. The camera catches fragments, a blur of black fur, the sky tilting hard left, bark rushing past the lens, her own hand white-knuckled and shaking at the bottom of the frame. Jessie screams at a pitch I've only heard in this recording. The mother Bigfoot is enormous in the half-frames where she's visible, broad-shouldered and fast in the way large things aren't supposed to be fast, covering ground with a momentum that makes the forest floor shake through the camera's audio track. Jessie grabs the baby Bigfoot. I don't think it's a decision. I think her arms close around it the same way arms close around anything nearby when a body goes fully into panic. She runs, and here is the only reason she survives the next 30 seconds. The mother Bigfoot stops because the baby Bigfoot is screaming against her chest, clawing at her jacket with both hands, and the mother Bigfoot will not close the remaining distance while her injured infant is that close to the impact zone. The baby Bigfoot is shredding the front of her jacket now, shrieking, drawing blood through the fabric with each pull. She is screaming back at the mother Bigfoot over her shoulder, actual words, actual sentences, telling Bigfoot to back off, to stay away, threatening to call the park. The mother Bigfoot vocalizes once, long, low, resonant, felt more in the chest than heard with the ears. Something in the trees ahead of her vocalizes back. I remember the first time I heard that exchange in the audio, that call and response, and I had to sit down because I knew exactly what it meant, and it meant she was already surrounded. Jessie's moving downhill now, completely off trail, crashing through undergrowth with no sense of direction and no plan beyond forward. The baby Bigfoot is still locked against her chest, still clawing, and the camera is somehow still running, catching the ground, her feet the blur of fern and root and loose soil and strobing flashes. She doesn't know where she is. The guide's voice is gone. The group is gone. There is only the forest and the sound of something massive moving through it just beyond the visible tree line to her left. The mother Bigfoot doesn't close the gap. She maintains it, parallel, deliberate, never fully visible, just the rhythmic crack of branches marking her position the way a metronome marks time. Every time the woman slows, rocks start hitting nearby trunks. Not thrown wildly, placed, single impacts, always just ahead or just to the right, redirecting her downhill, keeping her moving in a specific direction. She wasn't being chased, she was being steered. She gets a signal bar on her phone for approximately 4 seconds. She calls 911, gets a single ring, and drops back to nothing. She screams at the phone like screaming will generate reception. In the footage, the baby Bigfoot takes the opportunity to rake its fingers across her forearm, and she yelps and squeezes it tighter, which makes it scream louder, which makes the mother Bigfoot's parallel movement accelerate for 3 full seconds before settling back into that steady, patient pace. Then, from somewhere uphill and to the right, far enough to be a different animal entirely, a vocalization rises and holds. Jessie freezes. A second call answers from behind her. Lower register, slower, like a door closing. Then a third, directly ahead. Jessie starts hysterically crying. Full, ugly, terrified crying, the camera pressed against the baby Bigfoot's squirming body, her voice dropping from outrage into something much smaller and much more honest. She tells the camera this was supposed to be content. She says she just wanted content. She says this wasn't supposed to be real. She breaks into a clearing maybe 40 yards across, ringed by deadfall on 3 sides, and her legs just stop working properly. She staggers, catches herself on a rotting stump, and stands there heaving, the baby Bigfoot still writhing against her chest, her jacket shredded across the front, thin lines of blood visible on her forearm where the clawing broke skin. The tree line on the far side of the clearing shifts. The mother Bigfoot steps partially into the open for the first time since the charge. Not fully, one shoulder, one arm, half a face, but enough to see the scale of her properly, the breadth of her shoulders, the way she stands with a stillness that isn't calm, but is something that has long since finished deciding. She is staring directly at Jessie. Jessie panics. Not a decision, but a detonation. She throws the baby Bigfoot down, a hard release downward onto the moss and soil, and the baby Bigfoot hits the ground and immediately starts dragging itself toward the mother Bigfoot with both arms, injured leg pulling behind it, making a sound that I can only describe as desperate. For half a second, the clearing goes completely silent. The mother Bigfoot's eyes move from Jessie to the baby Bigfoot crawling toward her. Jessie starts backing away in small steps, hands up, already narrating her own survival to the camera, saying it's over, saying she's released it, saying they're even now. But why did she have to throw the baby to the ground? The mother Bigfoot looks back up at her. That's when the branch directly above the woman's head explodes downward. What drops out of that tree canopy directly in front of her is bigger than the mother, bigger than anything the footage has shown so far. and it lands close enough that the ground shakes the camera. This is where it stops being a wildlife encounter and becomes something prehistoric. The next Bigfoot doesn't swing down. He doesn't climb. He drops, full weight, both feet, from somewhere in the canopy directly between her and the only open exit from the clearing. The impact registers in the camera's audio as a concussive thud that clips the microphone, a sound like something structural giving way, and the phone physically shakes in her grip from the ground vibration alone. Bark and dead branches shower down around him. He straightens up slowly, unhurried, the way something straightens up when it has never once in its life needed to hurry. He is enormous in a way that recontextualizes everything else the footage has shown. The mother Bigfoot, who stopped my breath the first time I saw her step into that clearing, looks measured and proportionate, standing next to this male. He is broader, taller, the kind of size that stops reading as biology and starts reading as geography. His chest is heaving with slow, deep pulls of air. He doesn't vocalize. He doesn't posture. He simply stands between her and the path and stares at her with an expression I have spent months trying to find the right word for and keep landing on the same one. Deliberate. Jessie screams so hard the audio distorts into static for 2 full seconds. Then she does the thing that has made this footage infamous in every research circle I move in. She points the camera directly at his face. She is screaming profanity, a relentless, unbroken stream of it, and between the curses, she is threatening him. Threats that would be unhinged, directed at a person, and are cosmically absurd, directed at a male Bigfoot standing 8 feet tall in an old-growth clearing. He takes 1 step toward her, a single step, unhurried, simply closing distance. She runs. The camera swings violently left, and the footage becomes a tunnel of blurred timber, her breathing so loud it drowns the forest, branches whipping the lens in rapid-fire succession. Behind her, no footsteps, no crashing pursuit, just silence, which is somehow the most terrifying sound the recording has produced yet, because silence means he doesn't need to run. The footage in this stretch is almost unwatchable, not because of what it shows, but because of what it almost shows. She's sprinting blind, fully blind, no trail, no landmark, no light except what filters through the canopy in broken gray sheets, and the camera is catching the world in violent lurching fragments. She doesn't see what hits her. The phone leaves her hand mid-stride and the footage goes sideways instantly. The camera has landed in brush maybe 6 feet from where she was standing, and it stays there, running, recording a static sideways frame of undergrowth while everything else happens just outside the shot. The audio is what I need you to actually listen to. Screaming first, Jessie's, immediate and raw, the kind that comes from impact rather than fear. Then heavy crashing, not frantic but methodical, branches breaking in sequence. Then a vocalization so low it barely registers as sound, more as a pressure change, a frequency that seems to come from inside the chest rather than outside the ears. Then her voice again, words dissolving into pure sound, and then impacts, dull, rhythmic, each one followed by a shorter cry that gets progressively weaker over approximately 40 seconds. Then silence, complete and total, that even the insects stop for a moment. Her voice returns, much farther away, maybe 100 yards, screaming a name I can't make out, screaming for help, screaming in the unfocused way people scream when they no longer know what direction help could possibly come from. Then one final scream, cut off at its peak like a wire snapping under tension. The phone records 8 hours and 40 minutes of empty forest floor after that before the battery dies. But it doesn't end there. Rangers running a routine check on cameras placed near an illegal hunting corridor 3 days after her disappearance pulled footage that made the lead officer sit down in the middle of the trail and not stand back up for several minutes. The trail cam catches Jessie. She is alive, that's the first thing. She is upright and moving, which given the audio I just described, feels like information that should be more relieving than it is. She is moving because she is being made to move. One adult Bigfoot ahead of her, one directly behind, both of them taller than the camera's upper frame can fully capture. Her gait is wrong, lurching, each step a separate decision rather than a continuous motion. The walk of someone whose body has already begun tallying damage it hasn't fully reported yet. Her head is down, her arms are pulled slightly back, her hands are bound behind her. Not with rope, with stripped green branches twisted together in overlapping loops. She is screaming the entire time. The trail cam has no audio, but her mouth is open in every frame, body shaking with the effort of it. The baby Bigfoot trails behind the female, unharmed, moving slowly on its injured leg, watching her. The female Bigfoot shoves her forward twice in the captured frames. The second trail cam sits 400 yards upslope from the first, anchored to a ponderosa pine at the edge of a natural bench in the terrain, a wide flat shelf of rock and compressed soil that sits above the drainage creek like a stage. Whoever placed this camera was tracking elk migration patterns. What it recorded instead was that Jesse is tied to a tree. Both arms are pulled wide around a thick pine trunk, wrists secured on the far side with the same stripped branch construction from the first camera, her body pressed flat against the bark, facing outward into the clearing. Jesse's face is swollen on the left side in the specific way faces swell from blunt impact, tight, shiny, eye reduced to a slit. The male Bigfoot circles her. The female Bigfoot stays at the tree line with the baby Bigfoot, watching, not participating, not intervening. The baby Bigfoot is pressed against her side, dark eyes tracking the woman against the trunk. She is still shouting, still fighting, still trying to wrench her wrists free, still issuing demands into Sasquatches that has no interest in her terms. The male Bigfoot completes 11 full rotations in the captured footage before he stops. And when he stops directly in front of her. And what his hands do next is what law enforcement has never allowed to be publicly described until now. The male Bigfoot stops his rotation directly in front of her. He stands there for a full minute without moving, which on wildlife camera footage feels extraordinarily long, and she fills every second of it with words, curses, threats, pleading that she reframes as demands the moment she hears herself doing it. The whole exhausting machinery of a person who has never learned that some situations cannot be talked out of. He reaches forward and takes her right wrist in one hand. He pulls it against the exposed broken wood on the trunk. It is not surgical. It is not clean. It is full crushing force applied with the casual certainty of something that has never needed to calibrate its own strength against anything fragile, and the result is immediate and catastrophic, and her entire body convulses against the restraints in a single violent arc. She broke her hands. She screams curses directly into his face. He doesn't react. He moves to the left wrist. She is crying now. Real crying, the performance completely gone, and she is pleading in a register I have never heard from her in any prior frame. Small and specific, and bargaining with things she clearly values. Her phone, her platform, her following, as if any of that has purchase here in this clearing at this elevation with this audience. The blood loss is immediate and severe enough to be visible on the bark within seconds. When Jessie tries to collapse forward and her legs fold from shock, the male Bigfoot stops her fall with one hand flat against her sternum, holding her upright. He then looks down at her feet, lifts one of her feet, and brings his full body weight down through a single deliberate stomp. Then he does the same with her other foot. After those two stomps, Jessie can no longer stand on her own. Her head drops forward, but the trail cam catches her eyes still open in later frames, still moving, still present in the way eyes are present when a mind refuses to leave, even as the body negotiates its surrender. And that's not even the worst part. The male Bigfoot begins striking the pine trunk. Not her. The trunk itself, the tree she is bound to, starting at a point roughly 5 feet off the ground, where the bark is thinnest, and the wood beneath shows the pale compression stress of a root system working against a sloped grade. Both fists, alternating, driving into the same strike zone with a rhythm that starts slow and builds, each impact sending visible vibration up through the trunk and into her body where she hangs against it. She is no longer screaming. She is making a sound that is quieter and worse, a low, sustained vocalization that I don't have a clean word for, except to say it is the sound of a person beyond the reach of their own defenses. He adds shoulder impacts between the fist strikes, full body weight rotated into the wood, the kind of force that moves things, that changes the structural conversation between a tree and its own roots. This continues for several minutes, not frantically, not in rage, but with the focused repetition of something that understands the mechanics of what it's doing and is simply executing them. The root system on the downslope side begins to lose the argument. The trunk develops a lean so subtle, the first frames barely show it, just a degree or two of deviation from vertical, that in a healthy tree on flat ground would mean nothing. This tree is not on flat ground, and it is no longer a healthy tree. The lean accelerates. She feels it before the camera shows it clearly. Her head comes up, eyes open fully for the first time in multiple frames, and for one terrible second, she is completely present and completely aware of exactly what is about to happen to her. The trail cam catches the exact frame of the trunk snapping at the strike zone and the whole structure dropping sideways, root ball tearing from the slope in a slow curtain of soil and rock, and she goes with it because she was never getting free of those branch restraints, and the male Bigfoot made sure of that before before he ever threw the first strike. The female Bigfoot doesn't move from the tree line. The baby Bigfoot watches. There is a camera near an old survey path that the State Forestry Service installed 7 years ago and checks approximately twice a year. It sits at the junction of 2 drainage lines where the terrain funnels downhill toward a basalt ledge system above the river, a natural corridor that elk use in wet season and that human foot traffic avoids because the slope is unstable and the ledge offers no safe vantage. Just a straight drop of roughly 40 feet into spring current running fast and cold and indifferent. The forestry technician who pulled this footage during a routine check has not returned to field work since. I reached him through a mutual contact and he answered exactly one question before he hung up. The one question he answered was whether what he saw was real. He said yes, and then he was gone. The male and female Bigfoot are dragging the fallen trunk downslope together. Jessie is still attached to it, still alive. The camera catches movement from her, small and irregular, the involuntary kind that means a body is continuing its basic functions without meaningful direction from the person inside it. Her head leaves a thin, intermittent trail in the pine duff as the trunk moves, and I will not describe that further, except to say that search teams who walked this route 11 days later documented and photographed what remained along a quarter-mile of forest floor and submitted it as physical evidence in a case that was subsequently sealed at the federal level. The route is deliberate. That is the thing I cannot explain away and have stopped trying to. This is not random downhill momentum. The trunk is being steered, redirected at 2 separate points where the natural grade would have taken it left toward a gentler slope, and instead it is pushed right, kept on the corridor, kept moving toward the ledge with a consistency of purpose that I have replayed against topographical maps until I could recite the terrain from memory. They know where the ledge is. They have always known where the ledge is. The female Bigfoot works the uphill side, the male takes the weight on the lower edge, and between them, the trunk moves with a grinding slowness that feels ancient in a way I don't have the vocabulary for. Not primitive, not savage, something older than both of those words, something that was here before this forest had a name and will be here long after every trail cam battery has died. The baby Bigfoot follows at a distance, picking its way carefully on its injured leg, patient in the specific way young things are patient when they are learning by watching. She makes one sound in this footage that the forestry technician described to me before he hung up. He said it wasn't screaming anymore. He said it was smaller than that. The final trail cam is the worst one, and I mean that in the most literal and absolute sense of that word. The final camera catches everything. The male and female Bigfoot maneuver the trunk to the ledge edge with the quiet coordination of something practiced, something purposeful. One shove, together. The tree and her body clear the ledge, and the camera catches 40 feet of open air and then the river swallowing both without ceremony. The 2 Bigfoots stand at the edge for several seconds, looking down. Then they turn and walk back into the timber. The baby Bigfoot follows, disappearing last. Jesse Kerson's body was found 11 miles downstream, 14 days later, massively bloated. I'm Caleb Harlan, and my back is pressed hard against the trunk of a Douglas fir, legs on fire, lungs trying to remember what a normal breathing rhythm feels like. The canopy above me is so thick it swallows midday whole and spits it out as something closer to late dusk. Everything down here tinted in a deep, layered green-black, like the light itself has been strained through a dozen overlapping membranes of shadow before it reaches the forest floor. I have been running. I can't tell you exactly how long. Long enough that my thighs are burning and my chest feels like it's being wrung out by hand. Long enough that the muscles in my calves have progressed from burning to a deeper, duller protest that I know from experience means the reserves are nearly gone. I am being observed by something that is close. I look down at the forest floor almost involuntarily, half expecting to catch movement at ground level. Some animal, something recognizable, something that fits into a category I have names for. I am still looking down when the world directly above me comes completely apart. The scream arrives before anything else does. Sudden, explosive, zero windup, detonating right overhead with no warning at all, like someone took the upper register of a woman's scream and ran it through a distortion pedal until the signal tore itself into metallic shreds. It lasts half a second, maybe less. In that half second, I have not looked up, have not processed what I'm hearing, am still somewhere between flinching and freezing, still stuck in the gap between stimulus and response. And then Bigfoot drops. I don't mean it jumped down, I mean it fell. Intentionally. Purposefully, limbs drawn in tight against its body, torso angled like something that has done this before and knows exactly how to bring the weight down. Straight out of the canopy and straight toward the exact patch of ground where I had been sitting not half a second before. Bigfoot hits with an impact I feel in my back teeth. Dirt erupts. Pine needles blast outward in a ring 3 feet wide. Its hands, and I say hands, but what I mean are weapons, broad and thick-fingered with nails that are closer to claws than anything else, rake deep parallel grooves into the soil on landing, 4 inches deep at least, and those grooves stop maybe 3 inches from the front of my left boot. 3 inches? I am already scrambling backward on my hands and the heels of my feet before my brain has issued a single coherent instruction. I'm just moving, backward and sideways, across uneven root-laced ground, not looking where I'm going, not caring. The Sasquatch in front of me is 500 pounds at minimum. My brain is doing this assessment in real time with the dispassionate accuracy of pure adrenaline, and it is covered in dense, dark brown-black fur, matted with bark debris and fir needles, and its face is broad and brutally flat, and its eyes have found me with a focus that contains absolutely no ambiguity. Can I put enough distance between us before it decides I'm the target? Bigfoot does not pause, does not square up, does not vocalize again, does not perform any of the threat display behavior that gets discussed in the second-hand accounts. It simply moves, and the movement is already carrying a weapon. Something is in its right hand, a broken tree limb, maybe 4 feet long, cross-section as thick as my forearm. And I genuinely cannot tell you whether it grabbed that limb off the ground on landing or had it coming down from the canopy. The timeline doesn't allow for either, but both seem to have happened. Bigfoot raises the limb overhead with both hands, full extension above its head, and brings it straight down at my skull. This is not a warning. There is no arc to the swing, no feint, no hesitation in the mechanics, just a direct vertical overhead strike aimed with unambiguous intention to end the situation with one hit. I see the full body mechanics of it in a compressed fragment of a second. The hips rotating, the shoulders driving down, the entire mass behind the motion. I throw myself sideways and the club hits the earth where my head was with a crack that I feel as much as here. It splits the soil. It snaps off smaller embedded branches underneath it, like dry sticks. My shoulder hits a root cluster, and something grinds in a way that I file away to worry about later, and I'm already pulling my legs under me, already scanning, already looking for anything I can use. Is there even a place left to hide, or have I run out of options? That's when I see the gap. 2 fallen logs, old ones, half-rotted and gray, crossed at a low angle to my left, maybe 8 feet away. Between them, there's a crevice, barely wider than my shoulders, maybe 16 inches at the widest point, less than that where the bark is still on. I do not weigh my options. I do not have time to weigh my options. I move, I hit that gap at speed, and I drive myself into it headfirst, scraping both sides of my ribcage simultaneously, feeling fabric shred and then skin shred underneath it. And I wedge in deep enough that my chest is genuinely compressed between the logs, and I have to take short, deliberate half-breaths instead of full ones. My face ends up maybe 6 inches from the outer edge of the opening. My boots are behind me, heels probably visible from outside. I press in as deep as the space allows, and I go completely still. Will this cramped refuge hold, or is it just a trap waiting to snap? Bigfoot reaches me in seconds. It does not slow down or hesitate or try to understand what I've done. It lunges directly at the gap, both arms driving in at full extension, and those arms are enormous, not proportional to any primate I have a reference point for, built like load-bearing structural columns, and they wedge hard at the shoulders before they can reach me. I can hear the logs groan under the lateral pressure. Bigfoot's fingers are inside the gap anyway, all of them searching, and they are clawing through the air maybe 4 or 5 inches from my face. The nails leave visible tracks across the rotted wood and packed soil. I pull my head back as far as the confined space allows, straining my neck, trying to find 1 more inch of clearance that isn't there. I do not make a sound. There is a pause. Not retreat, not withdrawal, just recalculation. And then the tactics shift, and the assault on the logs themselves begins. Bigfoot stops trying to reach through the gap and starts trying to remove the barrier. It bites into the upper log, And I want to be precise about what I mean when I say that not gnawing, not exploratory contact, but a full deliberate bite applied with the intent to remove material. Wood fibers snap, chunks of rotted log come away. I can hear the specific sound of it, fibrous and wet, the way compromised wood sounds when it fails under direct force. Between bites, it uses the club, hammering down on top of the log structure with both hands, and each impact travels through the logs and into my back and spine like a shockwave, and each impact sends debris down into the crevice. Splinters, bark fragments, loose soil, all of it falling into my face and eyes, and I cannot move enough to clear any of it. My left eye is partially crusted. The smell inside the crevice is overwhelming. Rot and wet soil and sap and something else, something animal and hot and immediate that doesn't fit any category I have, but that every part of my body is reading as a threat signal. The logs are not collapsing, not yet, but material is being removed with every pass, and the timeline on that math is not favorable. Then the second scream comes in from somewhere to my left, and everything changes. Is it help or just more chaos about to land on me? Different pitch, slightly higher, slightly more fractured at the peak, but carrying the same absolute violence, the same total lack of preamble. A second Bigfoot hits the ground, maybe 25 feet from my position, not from as high as the first one dropped, but fast and low, and moving before it has fully landed. It doesn't waste a single beat before covering the distance toward the first one, and the first Bigfoot, mid-swing on the logs, mid-assault on my position, spins on it with an immediacy that tells me exactly how much thought went into abandoning the attack on me. 0. The calculation took no time because there was no calculation. Are they turning on each other before I even get a chance to escape? The two Bigfoot collide a second later. Not gradually, not with a closing approach, just full mass impact at speed, two enormous bodies trying to occupy the same point in space. The sound is percussive and deep, and I feel the ground move through the logs and through my compressed ribcage. There is no circling, there is no posturing or display. The fight opens at full intensity in the first second and does not step down from there. I am wedged inside a rotting log in the dark, splinters embedding themselves in both eyes and cutting small lines of blood across my eyelids, watching two Bigfoot tear into each other not 30 feet from my face. I can hear their breathing. Deep, guttural, ragged bursts, smell the musky heat of their fur, the earthy tang of upturned soil and snapped wood. Every movement sends vibrations through the log I am wedged in, but I do not shift, do not adjust more than necessary to maintain position. My chest tightens instinctively, and I do not breathe through my mouth for fear of even the faintest sound. I do not move anything. I do not absolutely have to move. Every nerve is taut, every muscle is ready. I am trying, almost superstitiously, to become part of the log, to merge with the wood, the rot, the earth around me, to occupy no space of my own, to vanish from the awareness of the creatures tearing the forest apart mere yards away. The fight does not pause. The two Bigfoot crash into a fallen sapling and send it snapping like a dry whip. One shoves the other backward into a cluster of ferns and moss, sending debris flying in all directions. Their arms lash outward, catching on each other's torsos, slamming into tree trunks, and rolling over exposed roots. Every hit sends a jolt through the ground, through the logs, through me. Their massive bodies crush small shrubs underfoot, scatter loose rock, and churn the forest floor into dark, uneven furrows. I track every movement through narrow gaps in the rotting log, catching glimpses of fur, arms, shoulders, faces contorted in violent exertion, teeth bared, claws extended. I am pinned, yet hyper-aware. Every second stretches long enough to feel the air vibrate from each impact. If one of them shifts attention even slightly, if their gaze flickers toward me, I know in an instant that my survival depends on absolute stillness. The chaos escalates further. One Bigfoot swings both arms in a coordinated shove, almost imperceptibly timed, and the other braces, legs wide, muscles coiled. Momentum carries both forward, colliding with a nearby trunk, bark shearing under the weight of massive bodies. Branches splinter above me, needles rain down, and the log I occupy vibrates with the shock. I am pressed tighter into the decay, heart hammering, every sense screaming the same urgent warning. Do not move, do not breathe. do not exist in a way they can detect. The fight's volume, its physical presence, fills every inch of the forest within 20 feet. The air dense with the scent of disturbed earth, the metallic tang of dirt and bark, the animal musk of exertion. And yet I remain utterly still, an extension of the rotting wood, invisible by sheer force of stillness and terror. And then the third Sasquatch arrives before I have time to process the second one. Is this the end, or does the chaos work in my favor? I hear it first, a crash through lower canopy 20 feet up. The sound of something massive simply displacing material rather than navigating around it. Branches giving way under weight and force. And then it hits the ground with an impact that reorganizes the local topography in a way that is not metaphorical. I can see it through the gaps between the logs, larger than the other two, or at least that's how it registers in the chaos. And louder, and moving with a weight that makes the previous two look like a preamble. Now all three of them are in the same 30-foot radius, and the energy in that space shifts into something that has no accurate name. They vocalize at each other, not sustained roars, nothing theatrical, but short detonating screams and guttural burst sounds, fast and overlapping. And they do this while pressing into each other's space aggressively, bodies almost touching, volume escalating. And this argument, this exchange, this whatever it is, lasts maybe 4 seconds before the whole thing pivots into the most violent sustained physical encounter I have ever been present for in my life. Can I stay hidden while the epicenter of destruction unfolds so close? One Bigfoot grabs another by both shoulders, full grip, fingers visibly sinking into fur and flesh, and drives it backward into a tree trunk. The tree is probably 20 inches across, and it shudders on impact. I hear the wood stress. Branches shake loose from 30 or 40 feet up and fall through the canopy. Bigfoot that got driven into the trunk bounces off and delivers a full-arm lateral blow immediately. No recovery time, aimed at the ribs and connecting with the sound that carries. The third. Bigfoot enters the exchange from the side with a broken limb it's using as a weapon, sweeping it across the back of the nearest one, and then the biting starts. Constant, purposeful, targeted biting, not panic, not defensive, aimed at shoulders, the back of the neck, the upper arms, anywhere a grip can be established and a hold can be built or material can be pulled away. Dark blood begins to appear in the fur, and not in small amounts. It soaks in and mats the fur, and catches what little light reaches the forest floor, and looks nearly black. The smell of it reaches me inside the crevice. It is copper and iron, and something rawer underneath that. One Bigfoot gets partially lifted, not fully off the ground, but a hip and shoulder maneuver gets its feet clear for a moment, and it gets thrown laterally. It lands on its side, and the impact churns the forest floor, exposes root systems that have been underground for decades, sends a spray of dark soil and shattered ground. Cover in a wide radius. It is upright before I have finished registering that it went down. The area between the three of them is being systematically destroyed. Soil churned into loose, dark earth, roots exposed and snapped, bark stripped from 3 or 4 nearby trunks where bodies have been pressed or thrown, fir needles scattered across a 20-foot radius until the ground underneath is bare. One Bigfoot gets the second one down to a knee and goes for the throat with both hands, fingers clamping, and holds it for maybe 2 seconds before the third drags it backward by the fur of its shoulders and the grip breaks. The sequence resets. They start again. The intensity does not decrease between iterations. It climbs. How much destruction can the forest endure before the chaos reaches me? I am watching all of this through gaps in the logs. The gaps are inches from my face. I am not moving. I am not making a sound. I am absolutely and completely aware that if any one of the three of them shifts their attention toward my position even briefly, everything changes immediately and in ways I don't survive. One of Bigfoot takes a simultaneous two-handed shove from both of the others and goes backward, directly into my log cover. The impact is a different category of event. The entire structure torques violently. One of the main logs, the upper one, the one that has been taking the club strikes, cracks along a fault line it probably developed years ago and has been waiting for an excuse to use. The crevice widens. Light cuts in from the left side where the crack is opened. Actual exterior light, gray-green and cold, and the tight compression that has been holding me in place disappears. My rib cage has room, my left arm has movement. Splinters rain down into my face from the split log. another log shifts under me, and the whole geometry of the shelter changes in under a second. The gap that I squeezed into is now visible from outside, from ground level, from the right angle, from directly in front of where the crack opened. You can see into the crevice. You can see my face. You can see me. Will the moment they discover me end everything? One of the Bigfoot sees me. Its head snaps toward the opening with a speed and precision that does not fit anything that size. No tracking lag, no gradual focus, just an instantaneous directional lock, head turning and stopping on my position as if on a pivot. Its eyes find mine through the gap. This is direct, unmistakable eye contact, and it lasts a full second, maybe slightly longer, which in this context is long enough to be geological. I have spent a lot of time in the field. I have had plenty of moments of ambiguity, wondering if I was being watched, wondering if an animal had detected me or was simply looking in my direction by coincidence. This is not one of those moments. This is the opposite of ambiguity. It sees me. It knows what I am. The decision has already been made before the eye contact ends. It disengages from the other two. It takes less than a second, and Bigfoot comes for the gap. Do I have the speed and wits to survive this direct assault? I come out of the logs the only way available, forward, fast, not standing up so much as exploding outward and converting the momentum of the exit directly into a running stride without any pause in between. There is no direction I have planned. There is no destination in my head. There is a downhill slope in front of me and dense timber, and I take the densest available line at full speed, because dense means narrower gaps, and narrower gaps mean something with that body width has to decelerate to navigate them. Roots cross the ground in every direction, and I hit them at different angles with both feet and stumble twice, and correct without reducing pace. Low branches hit my face and my chest. Something catches my left arm above the elbow and opens the skin, and I feel the heat of it, but not the pain yet. That comes later. Behind me, all three Bigfoot are in pursuit. I know this because I can hear them, and the hearing is not ambiguous. Heavy, fast footfalls that communicate through the ground as much as the air. And the sound of three animals that size moving at speed through dense timber is a physical phenomenon, something your sternum picks up before your ears fully process it. They are not trying to be quiet. They are not pacing themselves. They are coming. These Bigfoot are faster than me on open ground. I already know this from the way the first one dropped. That kind of power doesn't slow down on flat terrain, but I am not giving them open ground. I am threading between trees with gaps that make me slow down less than something twice my shoulder width, cutting angles through tight channels between root clusters and low branches, staying in the timber where my size is a relative advantage. Every narrow gap buys me fractions of a second compound. That is the math I am running in the back of my head, while the front of my head is entirely occupied with not dying. Are these fractions of a second enough to keep me ahead? The sound behind me is constant, and it is organized, and it is gaining. 3 sets of footfalls, each one heavy enough to resonate, and between them, the occasional crash of a branch being taken out rather than ducked, the occasional grunt of something large navigating an obstacle at speed. They communicate while they run, short, clipped vocalizations, nothing I can parse but clearly purposeful, and the fact that they are coordinating while pursuing me is a piece of information I do not have time to sit with, but that lands in my chest with real weight. I cut left hard around a tight cluster of 3 trees, and the gap between the last 2 is maybe 18 inches, and I turn my shoulders and scrape through, and I hear the closest set of footfalls adjust. Not stop, adjust, finding another line. Around the outside, I hear one of them hit something solid behind me, a trunk, a root cluster, something fixed, and the sound of impact is significant, and the footfall pattern changes after it. One set of heavy steps drops out of the rhythm. 2 Bigfoot continue. I don't celebrate and I don't adjust. I keep going. Is survival now about endurance, luck, or both? One of the Bigfoot screams, and it is close. Not 40 feet back, maybe 15, maybe closer. The sound is directional, and it is aimed at me, and it is close enough that I can hear the texture of it, the way the pitch breaks and shreds at the top end. I push harder. My legs are past the point of fine motor reliability, and I am operating on the crude version. Swing and land and push and repeat, hoping the ground keeps cooperating, hoping the next root cluster is passable, hoping the gap between the next 2 trees is wide enough. The timber is beginning to space out. I can see more light ahead. The ground is getting less technical, less obstructed, and that is a mixed development. Better footing for me, but fewer tight gaps to use as speed differentials. I take what the terrain is giving me and I run. A crash behind me, different from footfalls, different from a collision with a tree. This is the sound of a large mass going lateral, losing its feet, going down, heavy and sudden, and followed by a few seconds of thrashing, and then the footfall pattern behind me drops to one set, then less than one set, then staggered and inconsistent. Branches snap behind me once, twice, then silence. Not fading, not trailing off into the distance. Gone. I break into an open stretch. Real light, sparse trees, the feel of the dense forest releasing me into something less compressed. The sounds behind me are absent. Not fading, absent. I do not turn around. I do not slow down to evaluate. I run until my legs simply cannot sustain the pace any longer, and then I collapse into a walk that is barely more organized than falling forward one step at a time. I never look back. That felt like the right call at the moment, and it still does. Whatever was moving in those trees, whatever that three-body collision of something ancient and enormous and categorically indifferent to my presence actually constituted, it stayed in the timber. I made it out with a torn jacket, a gash above the left elbow that needed to be closed, a shoulder that went purple-green over the following 2 days, and a left eye that was partially crusted shut from debris for the better part of an evening. I made it out, and the forest behind me, when I finally stopped moving and stood still enough to listen, was completely and perfectly silent.